You know, a lot of people have seen my notes over the years and asked me what my process is that goes into making a page of notes. And so if you're interested in taking your notes from flat, information-dense collections of information to compelling visual summaries that allow you to own your learning and may help you potentially win some amazing prizes in the Goodnotes Think in Ink competition, well, my friends, this video is for you. Welcome back to another video, everyone. If you're here for the first time, my name is Samuel, and one of the things that I love doing on this channel is help people own their learning and infuse technology creatively into that process. And today I just wanted to give you a quick glimpse into the process of how I take notes. Now, before we begin, I just want to draw a quick distinction. I often refer to learning as a process of two parts. First part is breaking down the information you are learning through asking questions and being curious and critically interrogating a topic. The second part is bringing it all together and synthesizing something new. It's sort of like digestion. You break food down and then you take those bits of food and then you use it to build yourself back up again. Sometimes when I'm learning, I do that building up process through teaching or writing an essay, or as we're going to talk about today, through making a note. You know, I often get requests from some of my subscribers asking for a step-by-step detailed analysis of how I put together my notes. And I find that really challenging to do, firstly because of how chaotic and messy the process is, and secondly because I'm always adapting my note-taking process depending on the subject, whether it's biology, chemistry, marketing, law, etc. So it's hard to come up with an exact process. However, after a lot of thinking about it, I have come up with 3 principles that I reckon apply when you are making a note and learning regardless of the discipline. And here they are. Firstly, it's about finding the story that holds together the ideas and concepts you want to communicate. Secondly, it's about prioritizing active recall. And by that, I don't mean memorizing the information or the answers. It's more about understanding that the questions you ask and the understanding that you gain along the way is more important than the answers. Finally, number 3, finding more visual ways of representing your understanding. Now, what I would love to do is actually demonstrate the application of these 3 principles through making an example note, which we're going to do in a little bit. Before we get into that, I would love to cover some note-taking fundamentals on the iPad in Goodnotes. So today my tool of choice is the 13-inch iPad Pro. It is probably overkill for note-taking as a student. I normally use the iPad Air, but I've just been playing around with the iPad Pro recently. Got the Apple Pencil Pro in my hand, and I'm working in Goodnotes. So just opening the app, you can see the home screen where all the notes are stored. You can create folders within folders and organize your notes here. We're just gonna go and create a new note. You can give it a cover if you like, and then you can select a paper template that works for you. So often I find myself using the squared paper template, A4 paper, because I'm in Australia, simply because I find it very useful when it comes to spacing out my handwriting, getting a bit of consistency, and also just organizing things in the page. What's really cool about it is actually once you've finished making a note with that grid paper, you can actually change the paper template and make it seem like you never used it in the first place. The wonders of digital note-taking. And so yeah, now we have created a note. And if this is your first time using the Goodnotes app, this is the general user interface of Goodnotes when you are making notes. There's quite a lot of tools here, and Goodnotes is always in the process of updating the app and adding tools and features. And I get it if you're new and you find it kind of overwhelming, but once you sort of wrap your head around some of the fundamentals, it's pretty impressive what you can do with it. One of the first things I always tell people to do is go to the pen app in the top left and play around with the pen settings to find a pen setting that works for you. I'm currently using the fountain pen with a tip sharpness of 25, pressure sensitivity of 25, tip flatness round, and I am using a thickness of 0.35. And I find that that works really well for me, particularly because when I write, I actually zoom into the page and I write pretty big. And so I want to start by writing my name in the middle. And so yeah, one of the things that I just think you should get used to playing around with when making notes is just that ability to zoom in and zoom out and play around with space. It's actually one of the features that I just wish Apple Notes had. Now, if you were to ask me what is my favorite tool in the entirety of the Goodnotes app, I would, without hesitation, go with the lasso tool. And it's this icon over here, and once you have selected it, you can circle a word or a drawing, and then once you tap on it, by tapping on that icon there, it selects the word or drawing, and then if you drag on a corner, you can resize it and make it bigger or smaller. So one of the things I'm going to do here is make my first name a bit bigger than my last name. Then I'm going to play around it one more time. And this time, by tapping the color palette option, it actually allows me to change the color of my name. One of the things I'm just going to do on the side here is draw a star. Once again, selecting the lasso tool, I can go in and resize it. And a really cool function that actually saves you a lot of time is this option here on the lasso tool is a copy function. And so if you tap on it, you have copied that drawing to the clipboard. And then if you tap on another part of the screen, there is a chance to paste. So I can rotate these, and it actually saves me having to go through the process of drawing all these things again and again and again. Now, let's just say in the process I've gone in and made a mistake. I can tap on the eraser tool, I can change the thickness of the eraser, and I can go in and make changes. Alternatively, a tool that I actually use more to deal with mistakes that I make is the undo button, which can be found in the top left corner. And just like that, it undoes the decision you have just made in your note earlier. I remember using a lot of this stuff in 2018 in my first year of university, and it was just magical and it was so fun to play around with. And to be honest, in the last 6 years, Goodnotes has added a whole lot of features, but the ones that keep me coming back to this app are these basic fundamentals. So 3 things, just to recap: you've got the pen tool, and so I recommend finding a set of pen settings that work for you. Secondly, the lasso tool, which allows you to change the size, color, position, and rotation of objects or text on your screen. And finally, the undo or eraser tool, which allows you to deal with your mistakes. I think when I look at it, 75% of the things that you see in the notes that I've created in the past can be achieved just with those fundamentals once you learn to use them to their potential. Alrighty, so with that induction to Goodnotes out of the way, let's get back to creating a note. I think when it comes to making a note, what you're making a note on is just as important as how you're putting it together. And so coming back to that first principle, find the story that holds together the ideas and the concepts that you want to communicate. For me, this is one of the biggest things that took my capacity to understand and learn concepts to the next level. And it's the idea that not all ideas and concepts are created equally. Some ideas are weightier than others. Some ideas are more complex than others. Some ideas allow you to understand other ideas. Some ideas, once you get them, they open up realms of understanding that you didn't have before. I don't know if you've ever had a light bulb moment when reading something, listening to someone teach, consuming a piece of content. It's that moment when you actually understand something for the first time and you realize you can never unlearn it, you can never forget it, and that thing that you've just learned illuminates aspects of that discipline that you just couldn't see before. Whatever discipline you're in, there are always these concepts. In psychology, it may be the concept of conditioning. In physics, there may be the law of thermodynamics or relativity. In economics, there may be the concept of opportunity cost or the concepts of supply and demand. In chemistry, it might be getting a grasp of atomic structure or understanding at a really fundamental level what an acid or what a base is. And one of the things that I've learned in my workplace at Western Sydney University is researchers sometimes refer to these concepts as threshold concepts. And I think if you can find the threshold concepts in your discipline, in the lecture or the subject that you are learning, that is a really great place to start when it comes to creating a note. And to be honest, I've come to realize that great teachers actually do the work of structuring the curriculum and the content around the most compelling and important concepts. And yes, I will acknowledge that most of the time that isn't the case, hence why I think it's so important for all of us to develop that skill of looking out for those really important concepts. And so for today, I'm going to go with 2 fundamental concepts that I learned in biology that honestly illuminated a whole world of biochemistry for me for years to come. And they are photosynthesis and cellular respiration. And I've chosen 2 because I think they go hand in hand and form a pretty neat story together. Around 2 years ago, actually, I made an entire video explaining the narrative behind these concepts. Check out that video if you're interested. But in summary, this is an incredible story about how sunlight through photosynthesis gets trapped in glucose, which can be found in an apple, for example. And then we as humans find a way to eat the apple and extract that energy from glucose, which we use as energy to fuel ourselves in daily life. There's something about that that's really simple and fundamental, and most people learn that in primary school. Yet I think part of truly learning this is learning to rediscover it again for the first time. And so that video actually walks you through step by step the messy process of me learning that concept. Getting to actually putting the ideas down on paper, I know that I have two concepts that I want to create: photosynthesis and cellular respiration. And so I know mentally that when I put together this note, I'm going to divide it in two and give half of the space to photosynthesis and the other half to cellular respiration. But before I get to dividing the page in two, I'm also going to leave a bit of room for a title. And I think the idea that sort of brings it all together can be encapsulated in the title, The Journey of Energy. And so my title's at the top, and as you can see, I'm already trying to think visually right from the outset. I've dedicated that much space to photosynthesis, and I've actually framed it as a question. What is photosynthesis? And I've added a bit of green into that because stereotypically I associate green with photosynthesis. And for cellular respiration, I've got another question there, and this time I've gone with a bit of an orange. And I don't know, I think I chose orange because it kind of contrasts with the green. And by the way, the purpose of these framing questions is I'm trying to design this in the way that highlights the questions, because it's actually the journey of curiosity that I went on and the sequence of questions that I asked that actually captures my understanding. And so often in my mind, I'm nesting the answers within the questions. And for me, the questions are more valuable. You know, often what I'll do, and I think I've spoken about this in a video a long time ago, is I'll actually spend a lot of time writing down as many questions as possible from the lecture or textbook, and then I spend a bit of time grouping them together. I think that does quite a few things. Firstly, it gives me a view of the bigger picture. It helps me identify some of the threshold concepts. And then when it comes to revising for that topic, often all I'll do is just pick up that list of questions and then review them and use them as a way to test myself. Getting to photosynthesis. As we know, the story starts with energy leaving the sun. So I've drawn a sun here, I've made it yellow. I've also drawn a tree, and I've led with the question of what does the tree need to grow? The answer to that is self-evidently a little bit of sunlight, some water, and then the final thing that's needed for photosynthesis is a bit of carbon dioxide. And I've just gone in really quick and color-coded each one of these, once again, just to make them distinct, and also so I associate these symbols with colors. Often I'll continue to use these colors throughout a series of notes consistently. The arrow that I've just drawn is a representation of the magical process that occurs inside the plants called photosynthesis. What happens in this wonderful process is that tree produces oxygen, and we know that trees do that for us, hence why we want more trees. And also inside that apple, some glucose. Once again, I'm just gonna go in and add the chemical formulas for that. Now, if I'm a full-on chemist and I'm really into that, which I was in first year, I would actually go in and balance the equation, and it's actually pretty fascinating. Once you sort of see what's happening, you realize, you need 6 carbon dioxides because the glucose on the other side of the equation needs 6 carbons to form its basic structure. And one of the things I've done here is I've gone beyond just the chemical formula of glucose. I've drawn a simplified representation of glucose with 6 carbons there, just to remind me that glucose has 6 carbons, and that's where the carbon dioxides are going. I honestly think as you're going through this process, just allow your curiosity to lead the way. Don't just make this you looking at a textbook and transcribing information from point A to point B. It's actually about forming those connections between what you know and what you don't know, and learning to just embrace that uncertainty of not knowing. And so in summary, just in case you didn't see it, photosynthesis takes the sun's energy, captures it in a glucose molecule, hence photo meaning light, and synthesis meaning to create. And it's that process of creating from light that I'm trying to capture here. Very simple, but once you've understood it, you can't unsee it. And you wanna know what's crazy? And I'm spoiling the other video that I pointed to earlier if you haven't watched it yet. But cellular respiration is essentially photosynthesis in reverse. And so I'm just gonna go in and copy the products of photosynthesis, oxygen and glucose, and paste them at the start of this wonderful process called cellular respiration that occurs in the cells of humans. And so essentially what we do is we take the two things that plants produce, oxygen and glucose. We breathe oxygen in, we digest our food, and we get glucose into our blood. And we, through this process, produce the very same things that photosynthesis takes in. Water, CO2, which we breathe out, and sunlight, except with a twist, because the energy is no longer in the form of sunlight. It's actually undergone multiple transformations. It's gone from sunlight to energy being stored in the molecule of glucose, and then when we break that down, our body stores it in a molecule that biologists call ATP. Which really simply put is the energy that our cells use. And so that cellular respiration is a remarkable process in itself, but when you zoom out and remind yourself of the bigger picture here, the line through it all is the journey that sunlight has taken from the sun all the way into the human body, into the cell, all the way into the human body, into ATP, becoming the energy that fuels our cells. It essentially paints a picture of how we run on the sun's energy. And I remember doing this and had a million questions about biology, which developed a fascination in me about biochemistry. And what's interesting is, the more and more you go into biochemistry, the more and more you realize this model that's put forward is flawed. But I think for someone who was in first year, it was a pretty good low resolution representation of these two processes. And so I'm just gonna go in really quickly and add some finishing touches to make this note presentable. One of the things that I'm doing is resizing things, playing around with space, orientation, giving a bit of breathing space on the edges. I'm basically being a designer here who is trying to, in a sense, put together a poster. And that's something I really value, particularly when I am making notes on concepts that I think are really important. And so that is the final note that I have put together. Once again, just using those three fundamental tools that I introduced earlier in the video. And a reason why I think this is a good note comes back to those three principles. Firstly, it communicates an idea, but not just any idea, a really important and compelling one in its field. One that integrates and opens up understanding in biology. Secondly, it stimulates active recall, and that can be seen through its use of questions that frame the information below it, colors and the patterns that are used to associate certain things with each other, and overall a design that is memorable, which connects to number 3, it's visual. This wasn't just a page of notes that was written as definitions from left to right, from top to bottom. This page lays out a story visually. And so I think one of the things that this process just didn't capture, which I sort of am dealing with all the time, is the process of learning is messy. It's chaotic, it's filled with uncertainty, it's filled with clarification, re-clarification, asking a good question, asking a bad question, realizing that you don't know stuff, reaching your limits, getting to a stage where you realize, no, I sort of just gotta get something done, and just wrestling with that state of not knowing. And I think if we can just make that shift from, I need to have the right answer and I need to always be correct, to there's a lot I don't know, but if I can learn to approach this topic with curiosity, ask good questions, I can start to piece together a puzzle of what's going on. And I think a note is a really cool way to capture that. So I think these 3 principles apply to whatever note that you're putting together, regardless of whether you're in school, university, or just making a note in another context. Speaking of other contexts, by the way, right now Goodnotes is running a competition called the Think in Ink competition. And if you're interested in submitting some of your notes into that competition, I actually think these are some really good principles and tips to keep in mind when making your notes. Firstly, because I am the head judge, and secondly, because the marking rubric is actually built implicitly on those 3 principles. And so I hope that was helpful, guys. I understand as I put the note together, I was more focused on explaining my thinking than the actual technical stuff on the iPad. And so if you are interested in that, please let me know down in the comment section below, or just any questions in general. One of the questions that keeps popping up is, how do you get good handwriting on the iPad Pro? And so I might make a really quick video on that. Let me know if you're interested. But apart from that, always open to your ideas. And I will see you in the next video.